The year ahead in media, the agency view. Interviewer is Brian Weiser of Pivotal Research Group, and CEO Steve King is here from Publicis Media. Please welcome Steve and Brian.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Hi,
you,
Brian.
Steve.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, too. Well, this should be a fun conversation.
I hope so. Depends what you ask me.
We'll see. So, the first topic I thought would be worth diving into some depth in the context of trust, which is, anyone listening to the earnings calls with the holding companies, go back pre-2015, trust was an issue I was bringing up quite a lot. Mm-hmm. We hear about it now, mostly in the post-K2 context. What would you describe as the state of trust between marketers and media agencies now and in the post-K2 report era?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a very good question. I think certainly in any service business, trust is the number one criteria. And I'm not sure it's got so much to do with the post-K2 era, but I think trust in terms of, if you think of clients, obviously, drive our business, the trust that clients have in us as a agency supplier, the trust they have in their advertising ecosystem, in terms of the platforms that they use, in terms of measurement, etc. There are question marks about trust or all of those. As you know, 21 months ago when we created Publicis Media, we decided to have a really clear positioning in the marketplace and had three principles: trust, talent, and transformation. Those are the three principles. And we recognize, from our clients that trust was the number one criteria, and we pivoted our business around that. Now, at that same time, and coincidentally at the same time, you had K2 or the ANA investigation, and that triggered, as many audits. And we had 34 client audits on our business across different categories in the US. And we came out of that, every one of those audits, many of the clients obviously came out publicly, and it actually had the obverse that you might suspect, and as you've met some of these clients, I know, and they've actually said, our trust has been fortified in the agency, and it's actually allowed us to have a stronger position. So I would say the answer to your question twofold. One, I think trust is a more important component, and I think the trust that we have with our clients is stronger than ever.
Right. It's a good point that if it prompted a conversation that wasn't otherwise happening in a level of depth that clients didn't realize they needed to have, then that is a positive thing for the long-term health. At the same time, and I've spoken about this on your earnings call before, I like to use the term that clients have applied enhanced contract scrutiny over the last couple of years. And it's hard not to point to a deceleration in growth at an industry level. Now, you guys have done better. I think you've come off a soft base. You're growing reasonably well right now. But you've said it didn't impact your revenue growth. Why is it, or can you opine on why it is that when I talk to marketers, to pitch consultants, we do hear that some form of enhanced contract scrutiny is contributing to some of the deceleration we're seeing at an industry level? Yeah.
Well, if you think that we exited that ANA investigation, and this was not what I anticipated beforehand, our business was stronger for that. Because one, it fortified the relationships we had, and it probably led to some of the media reviews, which we've now had and we've prevailed on. So that's one thing. Two, when you talk about the sort of contractual language, it's definitely created environment now with clients. I think they're much more aware, and many of those clients will today, whereas they would have had a sort of pitch review and it would have been a beauty parade and everyone would have gone forward, and then afterwards they would have had the contract negotiations with generally the lead agency. Quite often, I think one change that's happened is the clients have preceded the submissions with the clarification on the contract language. And actually that's something that we've welcomed, and I think for us, we're perhaps in a more advantageous position. We don't have any we're not doing any undisclosed arbitrage, we don't own any ad technology. So, that sort of neutrality that we've got has helped us, I think, be far bolder and clearer in terms of that language. But that's probably the change. I think it's perhaps led to new opportunities. It's perhaps led to clients having increased confidence that actually, rather than using third parties, the type of verification and auditing that we do internally on ourselves actually gives them proof of purchase for them.
Right. Well, and then so going forward, when we think about how trust isn't getting less important, there's more complexity on an ongoing basis. So is there a way that you build in trust on an ongoing basis? Like 3 months later, if there's some, or 6 months after signing on a new client, there's something that maybe the client didn't contemplate. It's a new revenue stream potentially. Maybe it allows you to service the client better, but maybe the client maybe agrees, disagrees about how you should be getting paid for it. How do you make sure on an ongoing basis through an engagement or through a relationship that that trust is maintained?
Yeah, I think it's perhaps a little easier for us because we were a new organisation, so we could really start with a sort of blank sheet of paper, and that's frankly fortuitous for us. And one of the things we've tried to do is use very simple, plain, clear language. So we don't try and be duplicitous or conniving in the language we use. We're really clear in terms of the contract language, and we're really up front with our clients. And many of those major clients where we have prevailed, like 21st Century Fox and Lowe's and Lionsgate and Southwest, and these clients who won last year have called us out because of the approach we've taken about trust and transparency. So we've really tried to make that a point of difference. We realise there's a challenge in the marketplace, and that seems like a pretty healthy positioning to have.
Right. Well, let's move on a bit to the talent piece, which, as everyone knows, the assets of an agency go up and down the elevator, whether they're in New York or they're in Delhi or in Sao Paulo or anywhere else. But in the United States, one of the biggest issues I observe, and some of you may know, I spent 8 years working in agency land, and the diversity issue I think of is a real business issue.
Yeah.
For a whole lot of reasons, untapped talent, et cetera. If most people end up in the agency world because their cousin worked in it and their uncle worked in it, or because their friend works in it, you end up with a certain kind of bias.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you're maximizing where you're getting people from and the diversity of points of view, if not socioeconomically or otherwise?
Well, I think the points you make, I couldn't disagree with that, and I think there's another point on top of that. If you are working in London or New York or some of these other cities you mentioned, they are so expensive to live. You're also, it's really hard to work there, as I say, an intern, unless you've got parental support. So that actually amplifies exactly what you're saying. I do think, and fortuitously coming from Publicis, which has always been about viva la difference and celebrating diversity, I do think that business leaders, I think, unquestionably recognise that diversity is better for your business. It's not just something you need to do for a health check point of view or something to look good in a CSR report. It's really good for the business performance of the business. And we've had to implement changes and organisational systems to actually combat what you're saying, because you're absolutely right, particularly in major cities. So we have programs such as a multicultural university where we invite potential students from different backgrounds. We do this in London, we definitely do it here in New York, and we invite 100 graduates, new potential graduates, as we are a potential employee. We do that with some partners like Facebook and Univision. And then at the end of that, we hope that they are more likely to be employed, having understood what our business is about. So we're sort of reaching out to do that. Secondly, many of our clients will actually be prescriptive, and they will actually, when we are looking, to appoint us, diversity and inclusion will be really important factors for them. So, you probably, I think you may have even reported, last year we won the USAA assignment, and diversity was one of the key criteria. And I think from memory, it was something like, they insisted that one of the mandates we had to have a 30% diversity makeup in the team. And, I know when we were doing the report back, so this was an assignment that transcended our business. So, it was in Digitas, it was in Sapient, it was in Starcom, it was, multidisciplinary and focused around that client. And when we do I know at the end of the year, we were something like 70%. So that's female and multicultural. So, pushing ahead of that is something that I think is definitely helping us. But, this is not going to, the challenges you said, the economic challenges are not going to go away overnight.
Right. So, a related thing then is once you get people in the door, regardless of who they are, where they've come from, keeping them is a problem. I observe that, agencies right now, because there is so much pressure on the revenue base, what clients are willing to pay for an overall assignment, maybe you keep the top people on an account, squeeze out the middle, outsource a bunch of people, and then if you're rising up, you think, is this the future I want? There is opportunity, but how do you both retain people? How are the challenges evolving to do that? And keep people happy given the pressures that the business faces?
Yeah. Well, definitely. You know, we go to these great lengths, like I told you about the multicultural university approach that we do, which is a great initiative. It's once we have those people, how do we retain them? You're right. And churn is a huge issue for us. You know, we're in a highly competitive sector and we train people and we invest in talent. You know, we have adopted some very specific programs. You know, we have a thing called IQ Academy, which is a training platform, which, you know, is intended for people at all parts of the organization to better understand some of the platforms and technology used and how they're used with Facebook, Google, etc. We also have a system called Explore, which is actually just inside Publicis Media, which actually helps people give opportunities working in different markets, different disciplines, and indeed different countries. So last year we would have had something like 250 of our sort of newer employees, our millennials, who have opportunities to go work on a temporary basis in other markets. And we recognize it's not just about salary and compensation, it's much more about what we can give back to the employee. And the, you know, one of the things when, you know, the new leadership with Artur Sadoun, who started in June, and myself, you know, the preceding year, that we did a survey amongst all of our 80,000 employees. And, you know, we try to gauge, you know, how they felt about the company. And, you know, we realized really stridently, and this won't surprise anybody in the room, you know, that basically a lot of our talents are frustrated because their main point of connectivity is email. And yet, you know, the way that people are ordering food, the way they're ordering taxis, they're booking vacations, you know, it's different sort of platforms, and responding to that. And of course, it's amongst these young millennials where our churn is the most concerning, and that's why we've made this huge, bold, audacious thing in terms of creating this platform called Marcel.
I was going to say Marcel is partly a talent tool, right?
You know, at the time it was coined as the Alexa for business. That's a little bit of a simplification, but it's, you know, if we talk about transformation to our clients, we want to be at the front of that. And, you know, we felt that what was the thing that we could most give back to our employees. We thought if we could provide a platform like they have Facebook to connect with friends and family in the same way we connect people together, the change on our business will just be huge. Right. And, you know, right now, you know, as you know, we've put a pause on our marketing activities in order to double down and invest on that. So that came not because we had, this would be a great new business thing or a marketing. It actually came for the very reason you said. You know, it was about how can we really differentiate ourselves. And you could see, look, if we actually, you know, once we're able to deliver on that, I think the magnet that we'll have for attracting and retaining top talent will be incredible.
We'll get to transformation in just a moment, but one other point I want to, I guess, get your take on. So agencies, in my experience and observation, can be endlessly entrepreneurial. I would dare to opine that there are more people who work in agencies. The percentage of people who work in agencies who have formed their own business or will form their own business is probably greater than the percentage of people who work at a Google or a Facebook or anywhere in Silicon Valley. Fewer billionaires. Mm-hmm. How do you make sure that people who have these entrepreneurial instincts have the opportunity to build out their own businesses or take the initiative to find a new revenue stream from a client, and doing so in a way that is scalable? I mean, is that something you can do?
Yeah,
still?
It's interesting. You know, I've been institutionalized for decades. You know, and I've always worked for companies. But of course,
entrepreneurial entities.
But
clear.
you know, people then contradict me and say, look, you know, I and a few others started Zenith.
Zenith is one of the best examples
to point to. Media agency, and I remember everyone said that would be a failure. No one's ever going to, you know, support a separate media department, separate from the creative agencies. And then, you know, I came here to the US 25 years ago and tried to battle against everybody else, you know, who said, we're never going to take media out of the full service agencies. And obviously, when you're running a very large organization, I understand the fact that people say, it's perhaps not so entrepreneurial. But I look how our business has absolutely changed its core business. You know, when we started, we were called Zenith Media Buying Services Limited. And we did media buying, and we were very limited, and that's all we did. And, you know, I look at the breadth of services that we provide now, and, you know, obviously along the road we've made some acquisitions, some of which have been fantastically transformational, others have obviously been a little bit difficult to digest, more difficult to digest. But, I look outside our offices and I see people who are absolutely unrecognized from the type of talents we would have got years ago. And, whether they're doing, landing page optimization, whether they're creating algorithms, whether they're doing code writing, whether they're doing social listening, whether they're helping build technology solutions for clients, whether they're building dashboards. It's such a different business. It's so verified now. I can tell you, just in the UK, I haven't just saw this, we have 80 separate job functions just in our media business in the UK. And I think the sort of breadth and depth of that business is so different. And, in my 30 years, the business has grown every year. Yeah. And I think there's a reason for that, because it's continually evolved and responded to client needs. It's a scrappy, entrepreneurial business. I wouldn't necessarily say it was entrepreneurial. People from the outside say, oh, your business is it feels entrepreneurial because it's reacting to market and client changes.
Well, this is a useful segue to the transformation point. The question of course, you've acquired Sapient.
Yeah.
Even your competitors in many cases have acquired entities that are doing similar things, if at a smaller scale in many cases. First question on transformation is, what were the reasons or advantages of buying versus building internally?
Yeah.
But then secondly, in terms of what, I don't know that everyone appreciates the points of intersection between what a legacy Sapient and IT services firm does when attached to a media agency, let alone a creative agency. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a bit about how that is changing what your offering is?
I think I could expound for hours about the differences.
Well, we have 4 minutes.
Building and buying, and we have that discussion the whole time. And there's plenty of areas, skill sets which we've built, and you'll know what those are. Many of the areas that your audience will know, the people here today will know. In the case of Sapient, we recognized that we really needed to make a step change, and we needed to acquire a leading consultancy transformational business. And 3.7 billion, is a very, very lumpy, powerful
big number.
Acquisition. And and we recognized that if we were really going to make that transformation, and I think everybody recognized the traditional construct of the sort of the agency business was being challenged. And but there was an opportunity to scale that. And I look now at the iteration of that. Could we be building Marcel without Sapient? Absolutely not. Would we be winning some of the clients that we are now winning? Absolutely not. Do we have the horizontal growth opportunities without Sapient? Definitely not. So. And then when you look at how our business opportunity, and as I think we have this business where we've tried to clarify and simplify what we're doing. We've got marketing transformation, which is around the sort of the capabilities which are generally in the media and the creative development. And then you've got the business transformation, the digital business transformation, which is really the core function of Sapient. And in the middle, we've got one common function, which is the data and technology, and we've created this single structure, which is the Publicis People Cloud, which is going to give us access to individual data, which we're going to leverage through both the marketing transformation and the digital business transformation. And you're beginning to see some of those clients where we're able to actually grow on a horizontal basis. And I would argue that nobody else has got a basis provide that full suite of capabilities from marketing transformation to digital business transformation.
In some cases, was it necessary to own those assets outright versus, for lack of a better word, subcontracting? Certainly we see in the case of the McDonald's arrangement, you worked with Capgemini.
Yeah, I think there are many cases where you are not going to be able to build everything in-house, and that's the same for us. You're right, but when Arturo and I started, our assignments as going on the direct harbor the 1st of June. The very first thing we did, we went to India. And if we have got a point of differentiation, it was going to see the 10,000 employees sitting in India where, I think for a lot of us sitting in the West, you have this idea that they're doing sort of repetitive tasks more cheaply that they could be done here. The reality is there is a talent base of 10,000 STEM graduates building, designing experiential solutions for individual clients, not outsource, but as an extension of the team sitting in London or in New York, and building that more effectively, faster, and at scale. It also happens to be more cost efficient. And that was something, if we'd have tried to build that, and we'd had in parallel some experiences on that, it would have taken us years to get there, and our clients wouldn't have had the patience to get
Does
there.
that change ultimately the kind of offering you have as a media agency? I mean, everyone's trying to already produce like content from a media agency. Is web experience and the other things that a Legacy Sapient or Nitro might have produced is something that Publicis media agencies are now trying to do as well?
Well, if you look at one of the hyper growth areas, to contradict to sort of the perceived view that our marketing services business is not going to grow, that the creation of dynamic creative to satisfy the huge insights we've now got about data and individual consumers, that is definitely one of the huge growth areas we're going to have as a business. And that is something that we are going to build, and that has applications in media and creative and in the consulting business. So I think that's something, again, that working together across these different disciplines, we're going to get to a solution more quickly if we come together with that.
Great way to conclude it. I think we're out of time.
Okay.
Steve, this was fun.
Nice to see you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.